Ready to go, Adam? All right, recording. All right, so thank you all for coming. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Bernie Hostovic. I'm the administrator here in Princeton. To my right, your left, is Deanna Stockton. She's the deputy administrator as well as our municipal engineer. Cindy Taylor is our open space manager, and Priscilla Saint Laurent is the attorney for the municipality this evening. Thank you all for coming. I am going to give you a really quick Reader's Digest version of what you're going to hear. I am going to give you a very quick Reader's Digest version of what you're going to hear tonight, and then Cindy will have slides that will go through in much more detail what I'm going to talk about. As you can see, there is a stenographer here. She is recording everything that is said in the room tonight. That is part of the requirements for this process. We are in the very early stages of this process. There's a lot more to do. And there'll be another hearing on the back end, but this is kind of one of the hoops we have to jump through to do the diversion. Real quick, the property that we are on here, CP South, is approximately 26 acres. 20-some years ago, this building was built here. The building and part of the parking lot obviously are not used for recreation and open space at this point. That is a diversion from what it used to be was open space. So there's roughly 3.08 acres that have been diverted from open space. So as part of that, the state says, hey, you diverted this land, you need to replace the land that you've diverted. In order to do that, they put a multiplier on that. So essentially, in this case, for every acre we diverted, we have to replace it with 5 acres of open space. So in the end, we'll have more open space than what we started with, but there is now a process we have to go through with the state to get to that point, this being the very first part of that process. We've identified some parcels that we think will work to substitute in for the land that was diverted. And so you will hear that tonight. You'll have an opportunity to comment. You may need to be sworn in at some point if you're going to do that, and we'll ask you to come up here on the mic. Everything is being recorded. It will be uploaded to the municipal website, so you will be able to see this. And if anybody else wants to see it, please tell them that's where they can find it. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Cindy for her presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Bernie. Can everyone hear me all right?
Just prior to starting, I'm Priscilla Saint Laurent, Mason, Griffin, and Pearson, on behalf of Princeton Municipality, I would like to swear in Cindy Taylor. Do you swear that the testimony that you're proud to provide is the truth?
Yes. That's easy. All right, so to get started, just briefly, what we'll go over today is an introduction of who we are and why we're here. I'll talk about Green Acres, which it's the Green Acres regulations is what's requiring us to do this diversion. I'll talk about diversions, what they are, and then the specific diversion that we're doing. And then I'll talk about our draft compensation plan that we've come up with. And then opportunity for public feedback, other ideas, happy to hear from the public. So as Bernie mentioned earlier, we have our administrator over here to my left. Priscilla's representing Mason, Griffin, and Pearson for the municipality. My name is Cindy Taylor. I'm the open space manager. And then Deanna Stockton is our deputy administrator. And the purpose today is to accept public comment on our proposed diversion of parkland. So to start, we're requesting this diversion because of the regulations set forth by Green Acres. Green Acres is a state program within New Jersey's Department of Environmental Protection that provides funding for recreation and conservation needs. Essentially, they give funding to local municipalities to buy land for outdoor recreation. They fund things like Princeton's Farmview Fields and also natural areas like Princeton's Mountain Lakes Preserve. Green Acres also provides funding to help develop and steward those properties. So once a local government receives funding from Green Acres, it is required to maintain a ROSI, which is also known as a recreational open space inventory. This lists all the properties that are in Princeton Municipality that the municipality has legal interest in, that's managed for recreation or conservation. So essentially, it's a list of the town parks and open space that the municipality owns. So once something's on the Rosie, it's encumbered by Green Acres, which basically means that it has to be managed according to Green Acres regulations. And this is a 143-page document that can be viewed at the URL that's at the bottom of the screen there. The regulations limit the uses of the property and the types of development that's permitted on the property. It also requires changes to the properties to follow specific formal guidelines that allow for public input, like the scoping hearing today. The goal of Green Acres is to ultimately increase the amount of parkland throughout the state. So by encumbering all parks and open space by the regulations, they're trying to ensure that the state is not losing parks over time. All right, so a diversion is a state legal process to remove the Green Acres encumbrance on land and then thus allow it to be used or developed for something other than recreation or conservation purposes. So Princeton is proposing to legalize a past diversion, which essentially means we've already converted the portion of the property to other uses, and now we're going through the diversion process to legalize what's already been done and correct the error. The purpose of going through this process, even though the diversion has already occurred, is to make sure that we're still eligible for Green Acres funding in the future. The general outline for the process is on the right of the screen, showing in the third from the top, the yellow box is where we are for the scoping hearing, so still very early on in the process of what could be about 2 years of work for the diversion. All right, so description of our diversion. Specifically here is Community Park South, which is block 6902, lot 2, and approximately 3 acres have been diverted to other uses. You can see on the map there, the parcel boundary is outlined in purple and the diversion areas are outlined in red. And those red areas are areas that are being used for things that are not solely recreational, though we still do use them for some recreation activities. So parking area A is used for residents to access the platform tennis courts, but it's also used for parking by our police department, so that area will be diverted. Area B is parking that serves the community pool, but also functions for the municipal staff who work at 400 Witherspoon Street, so that area will be diverted. Parking area C, area C is the municipal complex building, which serves many purposes beyond recreation and open space. And area D is parking that serves Community Park South, but also Community Park Elementary School, so that area will be diverted. The Recreation Department building does not need to be diverted because it serves recreation. The community pool, likewise, serves recreation, does not need to be diverted. There are a few parking spaces in front of the Recreation Department building that will be designated as staff parking for recreation or visitor parking use, so that portion of the parking lot will not be diverted. All of these parking areas will remain available for residents to use and access the park, but we are also making it legal for the lots to be used for some other uses. All right, so for the compensation plan, to compensate for this diversion, as Bernie mentioned earlier, the municipality must buy land that is equivalent in the appraised cost of the land diverted and 5 times the amount of acreage. We are diverting approximately 3 acres, which means we'll have to purchase at least 15 acres to compensate. Given the nature of our diversion, we are not required to replace any specific recreation facilities. I want to reiterate that this is a draft compensation plan. The scoping hearing is just a part of the first step of a 2-year process. So ultimately, the compensation for diverted land will be contingent upon feedback from this meeting, professional surveys, title reports, appraisals, and environmental assessment reports. Prior to the final application submission to NJDEP, Princeton will be required to have another public meeting to review its final application and compensation plan. So we intend to buy and preserve land along the Princeton Ridge, which is a unique ecological area on the north side of Princeton, which you can see highlighted in a yellow circle on the map that's to the right. Because of its rocky topography, it was historically not easily clear-cut, for farming or timber harvesting, so it still contains some remnants of mature forests. The region is home to numerous endangered species, including wood turtle and red-shouldered hawks. This area is also part of the Emerald Necklace Initiative, an initiative introduced by Ridgeview Conservancy to create a ring of interconnected, publicly accessible green space around Princeton. The initiative has been supported by Princeton Council through numerous past and ongoing projects. Ridgeview Conservancy has a video on their website, which the URL is at the bottom of the screen, which elaborates on the initiative. So the first area where we're hoping to use as diversion acres is land that is off of Cherry Valley Road and near Province Line Road. Two parcels that are contiguous with the 153 acres that the municipality purchased in 2021. These acres have mature forests, and historic aerials show that the property's forest existed in the 1930s. It's designated as medium-high priority for preservation by NJ Conservation Blueprint, which is an atlas for ecological resources created in partnership with the Nature Conservancy, Rowan, and New Jersey Conservation Foundation. To determine areas for preservation, they factor in water quality protection, habitats for rare species, climate change resiliency, and habitat connectivity. The second area that we're looking to use as diversion compensation land is land off of Mount Lucas Road. It's part of a 90-acre tract that's targeted for conservation in Princeton's 2011 Open Space and Recreation Plan. It likewise has a 100-year-old forest that's visible in 1930 aerials. And it's part of a contiguous ecosystem with Herrontown Woods and Autumn Hill Reserve. And it is designated as both medium-high and medium priority preservation by New Jersey Conservation Blueprint. And at this point, we'll accept public comment for alternative sites or suggestions from the public or alternative methods to achieve project objectives for the diversion. And if you don't want to make public comment today, you can also submit written comment that will be accepted until April 17th, 2023.
Please,
Hi,
please state your name and address.
Annie Dunham, 302 John Street.
Do you swear that the testimony you're about to provide is going to be the truth?
Yes,
Okay.
I swear it. I would just like to ask that the portion of Community Park that is currently used for ad hoc municipal storage, I believe vehicles, and I ask that that be also rededicated to recreation space. So it's kind of by the platform tennis courts, between the platform tennis courts and the picnic pavilion. There are a number of, I think there's a trash vehicle, there's some plow parts, there are sheds and a fence that's clearly there to protect municipal equipment.
Yeah, we'll take a look. I'm sure the equipment serves the recreation that's on the site, but we'll take a look at that.
Yeah, and it's especially, I think it's important that you find alternate space for it, since all of this preserved space that is being diverted outside of the park. And as I'm sure you're aware, there is a census block that will meet the criteria to be considered an overburdened community by NJDEP's Environmental Justice Initiative. So, part of that initiative is making sure there's equitable access to, high quality outdoor recreation spaces. So it's important, since you're taking land from that park, at least get whatever you can please make it recreation space for that neighborhood. Also, maybe consider moving the DPW yard and preserving that as open space. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Joe Butler, 18 Hibben Road.
Do you swear that the testimony you're about to provide is the truth?
Yes. I feel like I should have gone to my tennis drill tonight because I feel like the decisions have already been made, and this is a bit of a waste of time. But let me call to your attention Block 3501, Lot 29, which is 4 Hibben Road. It's at the corner of Hibben and Mercer. It is a 2.1 acre vacant open lot property at the corner of Hibben and Mercer. I believe it was on the borough's, the former borough's list of potential open space purchases. We've been very successful at purchasing open space outside of the former borough and on the ridge before. I think some of this land is not likely to be developed anytime soon, and I think that this property could be developed rather soon. So to me, it's a more urgent opportunity. And I think as we continue to add population and housing in Princeton, it would also be nice to have more recreational space, I think in support of that earlier comment, closer in. So about this property, it was also identified in the open space and recreation element from November 2011. It is owned by the Princeton Theological Seminary. It is also adjacent to Marquand Park and located at the corner of Hibben and Mercer, where there's adequate parking, also parking on Springdale, also parking in Marquand Park. And what it said in the open space and recreation element, I'm sorry. It said, it identified Mercer Street. This 2.1 acre property owned by the Princeton Theological Seminary is adjacent to Marquand Park and is located at the corner of Hibben and Mercer Street. Consideration should be given to obtaining deed restrictions limiting the parcel's development rights. But quite the opposite has happened. In fact, this property is now, even though it was not in any way ever blighted, it is now part of the 10 parcel property, or 10 of the lots that belong to Princeton Theological Seminary that have now been declared an area in need of redevelopment. So again, I think that adds to the urgency of trying to preserve this property. The consultant who was hired by the municipality back in 2018 said it wasn't big enough for regulation fields. I don't know whether 2.2 acres is enough for regulation fields or not, but it's certainly big enough for our young soccer players and our special needs athletes to use. And it's especially important for our immigrant populations and other, underserved families whose kids might not participate in organized sports. It's getting increasingly difficult to find a field where you can have a pickup game. So I think there's a real issue of justice involved in this. The town has refused to consider a synthetic turf field, which means our fields take a beating. We don't have enough fields in this town, and everybody knows it. I think the opportunities to get fields are limited going forward. I mean, I don't think anybody's going to want to clear property on the ridge for a field, so here we have an existing field that could be used, which I think is another point in its favor. In 2018, the property was assessed at about $750,000. I think there's another piece of property that's also available. Well, I think the town should try to pursue this. Marquand House, which is on Stockton Street, has at the back of its yard undeveloped, unused, just wooded property that could also be added to Marquand Park, which could also be added to this, which would give you maybe a 3-acre site, but that is completely undeveloped, untended, wild, and it abuts my property. I thought it was Marquand Park, but it's not. It's the back of Marquand House. So I actually think there's a really nice, if that were subdivided, you could have a spectacular addition to Marquand Park. In addition, Marquand Park has a foundation. Those people might be willing to pick up some of the care of that tending. They do a fabulous job taking care of Marquand Park, as you know. So that's another, I think, point in the favor of that property. And, you know, the seminary has been interested in monetizing their other property, and so it's possible that this could be available as well. Also, some of the neighbors have been in touch with a private foundation, so I think there's a possibility of money there either for development or for purchase. And also, as part of the ANR, the area in need of redevelopment, one of the benefits of that to the municipality is that the redevelopment authority may issue redevelopment area bonds to assist with purchasing and developing of properties. So that's another funding opportunity through that. Thank you.
Joe, real quick, do we have a willing seller on this 2.2 acres? Would you know that?
Do we have a willing seller?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. They're selling, as the 10 parcels of the ANR, there's a contract purchaser for 5 of them. So the property at the top of Hibben Road will be most likely developed, and I think it's worth talking to them. There are probably also some stormwater issues associated with the 5 acres that could be developed at the top of Hibben, and some of the solution may lie in that lot on Hibben. There's almost a constant underwater stream. If you listen to the sewer, almost even in a drought, you can hear water running from the, let's say, the Marquand side of the park to the other side, College Road. Constant running water under there. So it could be part of the solution for whatever stormwater abatement goes on at the top of the street. But they've wanted to sell the property, they're selling other properties, enrollment's declining.
No, thank you for that. I just want to note that at least the 2 properties we've identified, there are willing sellers at this point. That's one of the reasons we're pursuing them.
Well, were they for sale, or did you go talk to them?
Kind of a little of both. I don't know. They were looking to develop them.
Well,
and
looked like we were early on in that process, but it looks like a lot has actually happened.
So, and I would just note, just because we're buying these for the diversion doesn't foreclose other open space purchases in the future. So we can do, we can do two at one.
Well, what do you mean you are buying these for the diversion? Have you already made some sort of commitment to buy them?
We're not at the contract level. We're in the appraisal level. To get these. So,
too bad we didn't know earlier.
like I said, whether it was a diversion or not, we probably would have looked at those properties just because of the value, the ecological value of those properties, but it doesn't foreclose looking at this property or another property. If I would point out, if anyone has other properties they think would be appropriate for open space, whether just to preserve it because of the ecological value or it'd be good for fields or some other passive or active recreation, please let us know that as well, and we'll take a look at it.
Well, I guess I would just like to echo the earlier point that if it was community park, there's a lot about Marquand and this field that resemble what's going on at Community Park. We've been pretty successful at buying a lot of passive open space, and I just, the opportunities in town are limited.
Yeah. Thank you. Anyone else have a comment? And I would just remind everyone, because it's being taken down by the court reporter, if you tend to talk quickly as I do, if you can just slow down a little bit, it makes her job a little easier.
Hi, my name is Travis Weber. I'm at Birch Avenue, 195. A couple weeks ago, there was
Excuse me, Mr. Weber. Can you, do you swear that the testimony that you're about to provide is the truth? Great, thank you.
Okay. A couple of weeks ago, there was a petition passed around in our neighborhood. And the concern was the property bordering D in your plan up there. And I was just curious if there's going to be any changes in these areas at all, or will these areas like D and the rest of them stay as they are? Or will there be some movement there or anything like that? Will you be changing its current conditions?
So I'll let Deanna talk, but I know for right now, it's going to remain exactly the same, but we are in the process of reimagining CP South, so I can't tell you in 5 years that it'll look exactly like that, but I can tell you, even if we purchase the other properties, it's going to stay like that. And then once the park gets reimagined, will it change? I have no idea. We're still very, very early in that process. But in the short term, there's no plans for any changes to that property. Correct?
Okay. Okay, thank you. No, that answers the question.
Hello, Sophie Glovier, 68 Drake's Corner Road in Princeton.
Can you please spell your last name?
Sure, it's Glovier, and I'm here representing the Watershed Institute. So at the Watershed Institute, we've been working as part of the consortium to support this idea of this green emerald necklace, which I know that there's someone here from Ridgeview Conservancy who will talk further about that, but I think it is really a far-sighted investment in our community, this ring of green that would surround our town and offer opportunities for everyone for passive recreation. At the Watershed Institute, of course, we're focused on keeping our water clean, safe, and healthy. And both of these properties have exceptional wetlands on them. The second one that was shown exceptional. The other, I think, as the New Jersey Conservation Blueprint said, it's also of high conservation value. And the other super important thing about these properties that have been identified is the forests that are on them. And I think we all see as we drive around town the ash trees that we're losing, our oak trees, our tree canopy is really being decimated. And as much as we're trying to plant these young trees, it is going to take a long time before they attain the size and stature of the trees that are in existence on these properties that are providing all kinds of ecosystem benefits for all of us, keeping our water clean, stormwater uptake, et cetera. And this is kind of the race to the end for preservation in Princeton. There aren't too many of these parcels that are still available. And in the case of one of them, as pointed out, it is contiguous to the 153 acres that was preserved earlier. And we know that larger pieces of open space can support greater biodiversity, and it's also a key connector so that people walking out of town can move from one area of the open space to another in this ring that has been envisioned. So I am excited about the opportunity to use this, unfortunate diversion to preserve some of our last, most ecologically valuable pieces of land remaining here in Princeton. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Can you just state whether or not the testimony you provided here today is the truthful?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Yes.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Christopher Barr.
Mr. Barr, the testimony you're about to provide will be, excuse me, tongue-tied. Will the testimony you provide today be the truth?
Yes, it will be truthful.
Fantastic.
I'm speaking on behalf of Ridgeview Conservancy, and as Cindy mentioned in the presentation, we're part of this consortium that's been working with Princeton Municipality, the Watershed Institute, Friends of Princeton Open Space, New Jersey Conservation Foundation, to preserve some of the last forests and wetlands that remain unprotected in Princeton. And this is part of what we're calling the Princeton's Emerald Necklace Initiative. And the idea behind the Emerald Necklace Initiative is to preserve the remaining forests and wetlands in Princeton that are not yet protected, and then to link the open space through a system of trails that go not just around Princeton, but also link downtown with the periphery. And then to connect these with trails in some of the neighboring communities, with Montgomery and Hopewell in particular, and hopefully to link up with the Lawrence Hopewell Trail. And the idea is to provide access to everyone in the community, so equitable access to open space across Princeton. The two properties or parcels that have been identified for conservation in the context of this diversion are extremely important. As Cindy mentioned, these both have mature forests that have been identified as having medium to medium-high conservation value or high conservation value in the New Jersey Conservation Blueprint. These are critical in terms of Princeton's climate resilience, in terms of carbon capture, in terms of managing stormwater runoff. They're also critical wildlife corridors and important for local biodiversity conservation. And they are an important piece of the green legacy that I think we all want to leave for the next generations. I would mention that in both cases, the parcels that have been identified for conservation are important linkage properties. So the parcels along Cherry Valley Road would extend the 153 acres Promised Line Woods, which has recently been conserved, and it would allow us to link it to the Ridgeview Woods and other preserved properties just to the east. And then the piece up in the northeast corner that was identified, that's one of three properties that are owned by the Landwin Corporation, where they have permits where they're proposing to build 29 homes on those properties. And so the consortium would very much like to conserve this larger parcel. It's contiguous with Autumn Hill Reserve and just across the road from Harrington Woods. And it also links up with some properties that have been prioritized for conservation across the border in Montgomery. So it is part of a larger plan. These properties, and particularly the Landwin 90, has been identified in Princeton's open space plan in 2011. And so these would be an important part of completing Princeton's Emerald Necklace. So thank you very much for supporting the initiative.
Hello, I'm Patrick DeAlmeida, 31 Race Street, and I swear that what I'm about to ask is accurate. I actually have two questions. How did this diversion happen without permission? It seems like a big mistake. And how much is it going to cost us? Because if we had asked permission 20 years ago, I assume the land would have been a lot cheaper to purchase than it is today.
So no one sitting at this table was here, so I can't answer how it happened when they built the building and didn't. We actually thought there were two other parcels that might have fallen into the same category, but through research we've determined that's not happened. But I can't tell you how it happened. It should not have happened, but it happened. So we find ourselves here. How much it will cost us, we don't know yet, because we're not at the point of actually purchasing the property. So
Are we in the area of the millions of dollars for this property?
the properties together that we will be replacing will be certainly seven figures when you add it all up. And like I said, with the multiplier as well, it's not just 1 for 1, it's 5 for 1. But we do end up with more property at the end of the day. So we are buying open space, but yes, it's going to cost more than it would have certainly 20 years ago.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I'll just follow up with my question. Is there information at the law firm with respect to who was involved when the planning took place to build the municipal building and parking lot?
Thank you for your question. There is, at this point in time, there's no information that I can provide to you other than what has already been presented. Like we said.
Well, you said you can't
speculate.
provide it. Do you have it, and you're just not providing it?
I'm sorry, that was the wrong verbiage.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. There's nothing that I can definitively provide that evidence the reasoning one way or the other, and I wouldn't want to provide you information that's not accurate, right? So what we are doing is moving forward, and everyone here is looking to correct whatever issue was presented at that time, and we will do everything to support.
Mr. Administrator,
law
is the municipality pursuing with the law firm why the law firm didn't identify this issue?
Yeah, again, it's kind of like trying to prove the negative. Obviously, they didn't. We don't know why. We'll look more into that. Obviously, it's been the same firm, I believe, that was the firm at that point and is the firm at this point.
It strikes me as something that perhaps they should have noticed, and maybe we should follow up on why it was not.
Like I said, there's no good reason we are aware of why it didn't happen.
All right.
Hi, Scott Sillers, 50 Patton Avenue. I would just like to commend the administration and the open space community for maintaining such an aggressive and thorough inventory of open space priorities on what we prefer, what we'd like to purchase in the future, so that when an unfortunate situation like this arises, it doesn't complicate our ability to move forward with open space purchases that we had in mind in the first place. Thereby, the delay in our ability to access open space funding, Green Acres funding in the future is minimized because we already have a good idea of what our plan on acquisitions were going forward. And I'd also like to just clarify that the fact that we've got to use the funds to ameliorate this problem is kind of separate from our plan to acquire open space from third parties. So had this situation not arisen, we would, and we wanted to acquire the same amount of open space from other pockets in any event, we would have still had to go out and raise the same amount of money, and therefore this is not really an additional amount of funding that we're going to have to go out and find.
Thank you. And the testimony you just provided, is it truthful?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's right, Scott, that we have to pay for this, and whether it was because of it's a diversion or it's not a diversion, we'd buy the land, and we'd probably, quite frankly, be pursuing this property regardless of the fact that we're replacing, this property with it. So it's, it is quality open space for passive recreation and ecological reasons, as Mr. Barr pointed out. Anybody else have any comments, thoughts, questions for us? Seeing none, I want to thank everyone for coming out. Again, this will be on the website, so if you need to review it or have friends that have questions, they can watch it. You have till April 17th to make written comments to this, so the information is on, or was on the screen, and I'm sure just call us and we'll tell you if you can't find it where you would write to have further input on this matter. So again, this is very early in the process, but I do thank you all for taking time out of your evening to come here. So thank you, and have a good evening.